As someone who gardens in Florida, there is so many things that are so unique about our gardens. And I think it can be really challenging if you're new to Florida gardening, whether you're new to the state or you're just new to getting out in your yard and going through your flower beds and figuring out, should I pull that? Is it something I want to keep? Or maybe is it something I want to move? Or do I need to get it out right away because it's an invasive plant that is going to try to take over my whole yard? So today I figured I'd take you around and I show you a bunch of different weeds and talk to you about what it is and what you may or may not want to do about it. Now, just a friendly reminder, weeds are only plants that you don't want in the place that they are. It has nothing to do on whether they are invasive, native, aggressive growers, not aggressive growers. It has literally nothing to do with that. A weed literally is just, I don't want this plant here. So as we go around, some of you may be kind of disheartened if I pull something and go like, that's dandelion and you could eat it. Yeah, but I don't want it there, so I pulled it. So some of these will have beneficial qualities. They may be edible, but I think it's important for you to understand what they are so that you can make more informed choices about what you're going to do about them. So this first set of weeds I'm going to talk you through, these are weeds brought in by birds. And the reason this is important to understand is because no matter how much weed mitigation you're going to do in your yard, these will show up at some point because birds are eating the berries and then they are coming into your yard and they are pooping. So being able to recognize them and be able to make some informed choices about them becomes really important because they are food for birds. The question is do you want them to stay in your yard or not? So let's check out one of our first weeds, and that is going to be Virginia creeper. Virginia creeper is often confused with poison ivy because their leaves have some similarities in the shape. This part, I mean, in this part of the shape. But if you ever heard the phrase, if there's three, let it be, that has to do with poison ivy having three-lobed, three-structured shape. But Virginia creeper has a set of 5. So you can see, if I can put my hand behind just one set, you'll have a point, a point, a point, a point, and a point. And that is Virginia creeper. It becomes really noticeable in the fall time period because it starts to change colors. You can see with the changing temperatures, you see that red there? Well, it could be kind of missed because we got these pink hibiscuses, but if I go closer, now you can see it. But you can see it's starting to take over. So the hibiscus, way up there, but all of this section here, this section here, it's also going all the way over there, are all covered with Virginia creeper. So here's the first thing you need to know. Virginia creeper is a native plant to Florida, but it is a very, very aggressive grower. So this is something I would not recommend if you have a very tiny garden because it is so good about spreading everywhere. One of the tricks I have for identifying some weeds that have gotten out of control that maybe I didn't notice in the spring and summer months is fall is a great time because a lot of things start shifting in color. And it can make things obvious that there is more than one plant in a space because they're different colors of green, or you might get some reddish tinges. So they start to show themselves as being in the space. And Virginia creeper is one of those. It is one of those vines, even though it's native, that can cover huge sections of plants. Like your large shrubbing hibiscuses, fire bushes, they can just like overtake these plants and basically smother them out. So while they are native, they are aggressive natives. So this is one of those ones, if you have acres of land, acres and acres to be able to take these plants, absolutely keep them. They're great for birds. But if you don't, if you have a typical urban suburban yard, this plant is super aggressive. If it starts climbing up telephone poles, it can get up on electric wires and hang down and really become problematic. I would recommend you take it out. So I do beat back our Virginia creeper from time to time. I do leave a little bit of it for the berries, but the more I leave it, the more it's going to spread in the garden. Okay, we have found our next weed. It is right here. Well, no, wait, not this. This is a loofah that I'm purposely growing, but this is bitter melon. This is super common to find because birds love eating the berries. And you can see, similar to Virginia creeper, you got a kind of a leaflet of 5, but versus having 5 leaves, you're actually having a 5-lobed leaf. And they have a very kind of distinct pattern that's easy to recognize once it's starting to take off. So when it first comes out, when the leaves are more immature, they'll look like this. So they won't maybe confuse you to think maybe this is some other type of plant, The good thing is it takes them a minute to be able to put on fruit so that you can come along and pull this before it takes off. When you pull it or agitate the leaves, you're gonna notice a nutty smell. Just moving the leaves around, you'll start noticing a very distinct smell. And that's a pretty good cue. It's bitter melon. Now, bitter melon is an invasive species. You really do not want this one to take over. While you may sit there and say like, oh, well, it's good for the birds, it's food for the birds, it is such an aggressive grower that once it starts taking over and fruiting, it is very, 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 very hard to get out. And then if the birds get access to the fruit, they will spread it everywhere, everywhere. And this is the type of plant that's gonna grow up and over hibiscus, shrubs, small trees, and just smother them to death. You really don't want this one taking over. Now, there are some permaculture people out there who will tell you the fruit's edible and stuff like that. If you were gonna try to eat this fruit, I've heard it's poisonous, so on and so forth. But like, this isn't like growing a banana or an apple kind of fruit. It's like one of those plants where it's like technically it's edible, but like, are you gonna really spend the time processing it? I guess if you're in survival mode in a pinch, sure, but this is not something that I would be wanting to like keep in my garden at all. So if you see bitter melon, I would definitely get rid of it. Now, this next plant has made its place right here under this Ponciana. And that's one of the things, as you're looking for plants that birds tend to spread, is they're gonna be where the birds hang out. So they may be like hanging out on this arch, and they'll tend to find a lot of weeds in this section, or we'll find them at the bases of trees, or they'll be inside large shrubs. And right here is another really common vining weed that you will find in people's gardens. And this is Corky stem passion vine. Now, Corky stem passion vine is not an aggressive grower, and it gets knocked back a lot by caterpillars because this plant is actually a butterfly host plant. So the immature leaves will kind of have, almost reminds me of ivy a little bit. They'll look a little bit like this, kind of longer with this half moon side. And then as they get bigger, you get these leaves like this. And you can see we've had some little buggies, you know, munching away at it. Hopefully caterpillars, hopefully butterflies. And the reason this one gets picked up by birds is because they do have their own type of passion fruit on them. Now, this is not the passion fruit that you're gonna buy from the store. These are very tiny fruits like this, perfect for songbirds. They don't taste good for you and me. Again, it's one of those things that like technically we could eat them, and if we were in survival mode, sure, but like, Now, I would recommend considering keeping it. Do you want it growing across pathways? Do you want it all over the place? No, but I do think if you see it in certain spots, it is definitely worth keeping. So here we have a standard variegated Schefflera shrub. It is just regularly, every few months, it's just cut into like a standard shape. And hiding amidst these leaves is Corky stem passion vine. All over it. And you can see they have a pretty similar color, so it hides pretty well. So it doesn't make it necessarily look untidy. There's some other weeds we'll get to that do make it look untidy, but this is the Schefflera, right? And you can see they're very close in color to each other. The great thing about this is that the butterflies will come, land, lay their eggs, fly off. Then the caterpillars, once they hatch, because this vine actually does really well in semi-shade to shade, the caterpillars will actually go down into the shrub, protecting them from a lot of predators. They'll actually go through their whole phase until they become caterpillars into chrysalis, and then they will come up and out of here and fly off. So you actually get a lot of Gulf fritillaries because you have something going on like this. Now, I have found that the Gulf fritillaries love Corky stem. I actually bought Corky stem. I had it in my yard, but I bought some and I put them on a trellis over here. But because it wasn't running through a bush, the caterpillars ate it to like a literal stick, It was spent most of this year like absolutely nothing. It has finally grown back and now there's like a few leaves, but this plant has been overtaken by caterpillars over and over and over again. But I definitely think if this is one that you have in your garden, if you want to relocate it or propagate it into another area, this is a great one. Or if it ends up in like a bush like that, definitely worth keeping. And look right here. Here is what some of these Corky stem passion fruits look like. You can see they're just really tiny little berries. Perfect for songbirds. Not great for you and I. But this is definitely a plant that will get you butterflies. It will get you birds in your garden. And you should consider whether you relocate it or allow it to grow in a shrub. It's one worth keeping. Now this next one, you may think for a second, what is that? Kind of looks like, from a distance, it can sometimes look like a Corky stem passion vine. On the other hand, you might say it looks a little bit like a melon, and you would be right. This is a vining cucamelon. Cucamelons are not native to the state of Florida, but they have made their way over here from places like Mexico and Central America, and they do make a edible fruit. So they produce these tiny little yellow flowers that make a very tiny melon that tastes pretty much like a cucumber. Let's see if I can, oh, there we go. Here's one. We can just pick it. And I've picked and eaten these before. When they're green like this, they taste just like a tiny cucumber. Yeah. Just like a cucumber. So this one, while you may not want it running across your yard, it is definitely one that you should consider relocating or trying to propagate over into your vegetable garden, because you do get these tiny little cucumbers, which are really yummy. They're nice to snack on. So every now and then I will find a leaf that looks like this, and I start to wonder, what is that? And then over time, the leaf starts to change shape into a 3-lobed leaf. And these are morning glories. There are a whole bunch of native types of morning glories to the state of Florida. So if you see one of these, this may be something you want to consider adding to your garden. Some of them are very aggressive and some of them are not. So you'll want to watch and see when it flowers to figure out what type you have, but one that you may want to consider looking for in the future. So we spent some time on some vines that may pop up in your garden, but let's go and talk about the ones that you really do need to watch out for these, because once they get in, whether it's native or not, if they grow right where they are, it can become a big problem. Like a really big problem. I'm talking about trees. So we're gonna head back over to our variegated Dayflower, and you may say it looks very green, but what you may or may not notice is that in this area, there actually is a different leaf type coming up right here. And this leaf type is carrot wood. Carrot wood is gonna have this very oval shaped leaves. These very oval shaped leaves. You'll see there's like a little bit of a point here and here. But one of the things that always catches my eyes is that they're very wavy. They constantly have this very wavy look. They usually have this yellow line down the middle. And these are an invasive species to Florida. They were brought in as a decorative tree that people purposely planted. And then over time, they started getting out into our wildlife and ecological areas spread by birds because they eat the fruit off of them. And now they are an invasive species. So similar to the vining plants, you'll find them growing in the middle of shrubs like this. And over time, these plants will get bigger and bigger and bigger. And you will see at times they will get this orangish reddish color to them as we get into some of the colder months. So you may wonder, should you keep this tree? Well, we said it's invasive. And invasive means it is not from here. It is an exotic plant that is creating damage and problems for our wildlife and ecosystems. And one of the ways you can be sure is once you start to break apart this plant and you like crush up a leaf, it smells like carrot. So as you cut the plant down, you will very distinctly smell carrot. And these trees are not small trees. These are definitely 20, 30, 40 foot, 20 to 30 foot trees, and they are huge. Because St. Pete, where I live, is a pretty old city, we do have purposely planted carrot wood trees from the 50s, 60s, 70s that are huge, huge, huge. And they continue to spread these berries all over the place. So look out for them and get them out when they're tiny and small. It's a lot easier because trees put down big tap roots that make them really hard to get out once they get a good foothold. And we are at a really popular time of year in the fall for many new trees to be planted, and one that will become a problematic weed for you, and that is oaks. Oaks are being planted by blue jays and squirrels all over the place. I know, so they can winter through, but what's gonna end up happening is they're gonna forget at least 50% of them, and you are gonna have oaks popping up everywhere. And you need to get them out when they're small, because oaks put a lot more time growing their roots instead of growing up. So by the time they're getting to like shoulder height, their root system is so prolific. There's no pulling it at that point. I don't care that it's only this big around. It is so deep set. So let's go look at some different types of oaks that you may see in your garden. There's a couple different weeds in here and we'll come back for them, but this right here this is an oak. And you can see it's about this tall. And then there is its taproot. You can see it's longer down in the taproot than it is tall. And you can see with this oak, if I flip around the taproot, it's actually, the taproot is longer than it is tall at this point. But it's still really easy to pull. It's not hard at all. So if you can find them when they're this small, then go ahead and pull them. If you don't pull them when they're small, now they're gonna start to look like this. And this oak is probably, let's see, about 2.5 feet tall, and there is no just pulling this out. We actually look, it's been accidentally cut a couple times, and this thing is big, big, big. Yeah, there's no amount of pulling that I'm gonna do to get that out. I'm actually gonna just have to prune it right at the ground level to try to see if I can kill it. But at this point, it's probably got a taproot that's feet down. Now that is only one type of oak. That's probably a southern live oak. I will show you another one that is a laurel oak. These are both two really common oaks. There's multiple oaks in Florida, and they can sometimes intermix and stuff like that. But you can look for this general leaf structure and it will help you see oaks. So right here, this is laurel oaks. Laurel oaks that have not been pulled. You can see there's a few back there, but these are laurel oaks that have not been pulled. And this is a big problem because if you can see, they are literally next to my house. And these trees will be 30 feet, 40 feet tall. You can see those oaks right there. That's probably where the acorns came from. So look for these. This would be, they're very big. You're gonna wanna trim these right at the base. Don't keep cutting them right here, because what's gonna happen is your roots are still going down. They're still going into your foundation. Go all the way down to the ground, cut. If you can pull it out still, do that. But at this point, it's probably not gonna be able to be pulled. And they can be sneaky. They'll go back in behind beds. You can see this is actually the back of the bed. Some squirrel went and dumped one here. But here's what they look like when they're smaller. So this is a laurel oak when it's smaller. This one I should be able to pull. Oh, yep, I got it. So that's a laurel oak when it's smaller. You may have moved to Florida because the palms, baby. You wanted to be near the beach. And now all of a sudden, you have a bunch of palms as weeds. So let's go find some palms, because I always have palms as weeds in my garden. Because just similar, this is the problem with some of the native plants, including our palms, our pines, our oaks. They all put these really, really, really deep tap roots because they're trying to be able to survive the rain and the fires and the droughts and all the stuff. But they put down deep roots, and it makes it really hard to pull once they get past a certain point. The good thing is with the pines, the oaks, and the palms, even if they get a little bit of height, if you chop them right at the ground or you get like some loppers, I'll link one down below that I love and is really good. They're easy to kill at that point. Can you tell I know where my problem spots are? So here is a baby palm. They kind of look like a green grass in the beginning, usually with like a two split like this. Depends on the type of palm, but like your queen palms, your Areca palms, they'll put out these little things like this. Let's see if we can pull it out. And then this is an Areca palm, so then it starts to branch because that's how they structure, but many other types will do something similar to this. But what you're looking for is these two little grass things popping up. So it is not a grass. This is actually the beginning of a palm. They're pretty easy to pull when they're this small, because on some level palms are kind of like grasses, and you just can throw it down at this point because there's no flowering. It's not going to reroot anywhere. Most of the trees, if you pull them pretty young, you can just chuck them on the ground and they are good to go. And palms are really similar to your vining plants, is that birds are usually the ones distributing them. They have berries, so you can see like up here, this sable palm has berries that the birds love. This helps them during the winter months and migratory periods. So they eat them, and similar, they're just gonna poop them out right below. And now voila, I've got a ton of Areca palms growing in my hibiscus plants. So these ones, if I wanted to get rid of them, which I do, I have to go down into the base of these and get rid of them. This is why it's really important, if you don't want your palms getting all over the place, is that when they are fruiting and flowering, especially things like Areca palms, you want to cut those off, because otherwise they just spread and spread and spread, and you are constantly trying to get rid of palms all over the place. As you saw, they were even in my variegated Schefflera earlier. They're everywhere. And things like areca palms, queen palms. So sometimes your landscaping is part of your problem with weeds. Now, another plant that you may get in your garden, whether you put it in or not, is ferns. And there are some native ferns to Florida, but there is also an invasive. The name kind of goes back and forth. Sometimes we call our native fern the Boston fern, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we'll call it the sword fern. Either way, the invasive fern and our native fern actually look really, really similar to each other, and they will spread through runners underground. So you can see I've got ferns all over the place. This all came from my neighbor's yard. And the way you can tell if this is an invasive fern or not is you're just gonna pull up. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna look at this root system. So this is the type of fern that can be either native or invasive. So you can see they're very slender, they don't have a huge like subleaf structure, and they will spread like crazy, the native or the invasive. But the way you can tell the invasive versus the native is if you pull it and you look at the roots. If there's little bulb tuber things on there, that is the invasive type. This is the native one. It's still annoying. I really don't like how much it spreads, but it's native. So this is when where you get to make the choice, because native plants can still be aggressive and they can still be annoying, even if, you know, they're native. Now, one of the plants that I always want you keeping an eye out for is Brazilian pepper. Brazilian pepper is the most invasive terrestrial plant to the state of Florida. We have like 700,000 acres of Florida that are covered by this one plant. Similar to carrot wood, we brought it here because we thought it was pretty. At one point, someone in Florida wrote an article that all of us should always have some Brazilian pepper in our yard. And they can be attractive plants, but they are so problematic and you do not want it taking over your yard. So I will show you what a very immature one looks like. So this right here, this is Brazilian pepper. You can recognize it by its 3 leaves. They do have this serration at the end, so they kind of look sawtooth, especially when they're really young. They do produce a berry that birds eat, and that is how it is spread, continuing to, well, it also has runners, and it's so problematic. This can cause allergic reactions in people, both on their skin and through breathing. While some people will sit here and say, oh, but it's feeding the birds. It's actually toxic to the birds. They just eat it because it's available to them, but it is actually killing off some of our bird population. So I do have a full video that goes way more in depth on Brazilian pepper, and I will link it at the end of this video and in the description so you guys can check out and learn way more about Brazilian pepper. But this is a big bad. We spend tens of millions of dollars every year in the state of Florida trying to get rid of this. We are ground zero for this trying to take over our entire state. So Brazilian pepper, no good. Now, if you're worried about the birds and you want something for them to eat, and you're looking around your garden, there is a plant that will probably show up, especially if you started to get into native plants, or your neighbors are into native plants, or maybe you're just so lucky that a bird poops some of its seeds into your garden. And this would be a great one to add to your yard. You just may not want it wherever you find it, but it's pretty easy to transplant. So let me show you. That plant that's great for birds and bees and butterflies is this. Well, no, this is tomato, but right here. Here you go. This plant right here. And this is firebush. This is actually our native firebush. You can tell because you can see some of the red veining on it, and the leaves are turning red because it was cold out, and they love to turn red when it's cold out. I think this is a very pretty plant. Now, I do not want it here because it actually can become a very large shrub. This plant, you can recognize it, especially the native one, usually has 3 leaves when it's blooming new leaves. You can see there has a red vein. And you can recognize this leaf shape. You can see it also is a little bit fuzzy. And this plant is pretty easy to transplant. It is a very, 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 very hardy plant. So if you were to see it in a spot and go, I don't want it there, this would be one that you could pick up and go put it somewhere else. And if you want an idea of what it could look like, well, look right here, no further. All these shrubs right here on my neighbor's yard, those are fire bushes. And you can see they have gorgeous, 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 gorgeous coral flowers. You can train it like a tree. You can make it actually into a proper hedge line if you want. He keeps them pretty wild and bushy because butterflies and all sorts of other good things like it. I have some also in my front yard. I also have firebush in my yard. Mine are also going quite wild at the moment. This plant can take a really, really hard prune, and you can shape it in all different ways because it can take such an aggressive cut. But the great thing about it is it does have these berries. But once you get it in your yard, you will continue to find it in your yard because The birds love this. It is great for their migrations. It is great for sustaining them throughout the year. And because it berries through most of the year, this is a great consistent food source. So if you are finding this in your garden, consider moving it to a location where you would actually enjoy it. And firebush isn't the only native plant that you may see just pop up suddenly in your garden. One of the ones that's in a lot of people's yards that they don't know about, that again, you should consider, if you don't like it exactly where it is, maybe move it, because it is so beneficial to wildlife and you may enjoy it too. And one of those is going to be frog fruit right here. Actually, this whole space is frog fruit now. And frog fruit, you'll often recognize it in your grass because you see these, sometimes also called matchstick weed, because these little flower heads look like matches. And this one is really beneficial and great for 3 different types of butterflies. They use it as a host plant, so you've got white peacock butterflies, you'll have common buckeyes and phaeon crescents, I'm sorry. And all 3 of these are really cute medium butterflies that love to use this for their caterpillars, which then also helps the birds. It can be mowed and used as a grass alternative. And you can see it does take a pretty good stomping, because I have been walking this path over and over and over again, and it has not died yet. I actually kind of want it to die. But it will live in people's grasses. It does get like a purplish tinge in the winter time, but it is pretty prolific and does a really good job. This actually was all one plant that I put right here in the beginning of the year, and it has spread everywhere. So something to consider if you want as a lawn alternative, or you could put it in a pot and just attract butterflies with it. Now, another one that I do see pop up in my lawn and my neighbor's lawn from time to time is this. I will see one of these little ones, and actually one of these that's in this garden was from my lawn. I found it in my backyard hiding in the grass. It was only about this tall, and I only saw about what looked about like this much. The leaves were about this size, and if you look at them, the leaves are directly opposite. They've got this kind of long shape. And what is this? And if you look kind of down, you'll notice that on the stem, it almost seems to have sections. And this is milkweed. This is the host plant for the monarch butterfly, and that is considered endangered by the IUCN, and actually it will help support their continuing recovery. So if you find it, again, one of those ones that's worth digging it up. I get it, you don't want it in the middle of your grass, and that's not great for your caterpillars, but you could take it, mix it in with your frog fruit right here, and then all of a sudden you got a place for butterflies to come hang out. And another one that you may see pop up in your yard, whether you do this kind of gardening or not, if you have neighbors who have butterfly gardening, you may see this. And this appears to be our native porterweed. Native porterweed, again, is another butterfly host plant. It is very beneficial to our Cassius blue butterflies, which are actually a very small butterfly. A lot of different wildlife, especially bees, like the flowers. And it is really good at spreading and becoming a great native ground cover. And eventually this plant's gonna look like this. So you can see the leaves are much larger, fuller. They've got that kind of bumpy, rounded edges, and you will get these little pokers sticking out with these pretty purple-blue flowers, which a lot of pollinators actually love a lot. And it's a great one to mix with that milkweed that you found earlier too. Heyo! Another one that you may find in your garden is this is a native wood sorrel. This one I'm not a huge fan of. It gets yellow flowers and it has little pods on it. Oh, like here we go. So it has these yellow flowers and then they get these seed pods. These seed pods love to explode, usually into my face, and I am not a big fan of that. But they are not harmful in any way. If they're mixed into your grass, it's not really a big deal. But if you see something like this, with this kind of seed potting, this is a native type of wood sorrel. Oh, look, there's the wood sorrel flowers. There you go. This is what their little yellow flowers look like. Now this one I don't believe is actually native, but this is also a sorrel, a wood sorrel. These are much bigger, you can tell from first my hand. They get cute little purple flowers. Now why these ones are great to have is if you're not spraying pesticides in the area, these are edible and they taste really nice in salads. They actually have like a lemony flavor to them. You shouldn't eat a huge amount of them, but putting these in your actual diet every once in a while, really nice. And they taste good too. It's like, at first, like you first start to taste it and you're just like, oh, it tastes like a leaf. And then you like bite it and you get that sour kick. It's really good. I don't know how to explain it, but if you see these, and this is, oh, also make sure it's not a place like where dogs pee and poop. Like you don't want pee and poop. I have it in an area my dogs aren't allowed. So consider wood sorrel. This one's really great. I highly recommend. Oh, so good. It's really good. Another edible native that you will find in most yards, usually in the sandier areas, is this one. They have paddle-shaped leaves, and this is our native purslane. It does flower. If I remember right, they get kind of pink flowers or yellow flowers. I think yellow flowers on this one. You see that paddle shape, and what you can tell is the leaves are very thick. Is the way I can describe it. Now there's another plant I often gets confused with, which is spurge. But if you would like to eat some purslane, there's places that sell it. You can grow it. It's one that you can put like in a basket container, you know, and hang it if you like. Now here is one of my nemesis. This is such a problematic plant. This is an Asiatic Dayflower. This one is so hard to make go away once you have it. Now this looks terrible because there's actually been a treatment put on it and we're trying to get rid of it. But it is not easy to get rid of because this thing roots everywhere it has a node. So even if you pull it and you throw it on the ground, this is going to reroot all over the place, which is what's happened here. And it is spread and spread and spread and spread. You'll usually start to notice it because it has these really cute iris type blue flowers, which bees do like, but this is not native and it is such a problem to get out once you've got it. This one, once you see it, like try to snatch it as fast as possible. And you got to make sure that you take it and you like dispose of it. You can't let this one sit there and like just start running because it will run everywhere. I don't know if you can see it right here, but there is Dayflower here. And this is probably just a cutting, not a cutting, but like I probably pulled weeds and I probably just chucked it. And at some point it blew over into here. So when I pull this, I have to make sure that I'm always getting rid of it. I can't just like let it lay down because it will just reroot. And to give you an idea how like durable this is, I pulled these last week. So it's been 7 days of them laying on the ground and you can see how green they still are and you can see right here, it's got points which it's trying to root and trying to root. And this is 7 days laying on cement, just getting beaten up by the sun, and it is still trying. And actually when I picked it up, it's actually trying to root into the granules of dirt that are in this area. This plant is such an annoying one to get rid of. And it grows super fast because you might think, well, it's good for the bees. No, it grows so fast and it just takes over everything it can. Goodbye, Dayflower. And this is how, like, even through mulch, it'll come up and through mulch. This is what it'll look like. Boo. Now you may be wondering, what's all that? This is sunshine mimosa and it was very purposely put here. It is a very cute plant. It's a very good plant. If you have it in your yard, it will be a very nice ground cover, but it is an aggressive grower. And it is hard to get out once it's in. So you may want it, you may not want it. But what looks similar, especially when it's young, but is not the same and is very common for people to get in their yards, is this. This is bitter chamber. It is an invasive species. People will tell you about the medicinal edible qualities of it. I recommend, unless you're very specifically and purposely wanting to grow this, take it out. Do not let it get in, because once it's in, it spreads and it spreads because it has these little seeds. You can see them. They're those little dots. And once they get going, they are going to keep going. Let's just take all these right now. My nemesis. All these ones need to go inside. We're just going to get these in the weed bin right now. Firebush I'll take you to. There's spurge. There you go. I found it. There it is. This is what spurge looks like. For some reason, people confuse purslane with this. I don't know why. It looks so different to me. It grows in cracks. I think that's the main thing, is people see a plant growing in cracks like purslane will, and then they go, it must be the same. It's not. And getting to know your native plants is important because you need to understand what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep, or even if you have exotic garden beds. But you can see in the middle of this bed, there's this growing up, and you'd be like, what is that? This is just regular grass. It's just gone crazy because it grew up and through into the bush, this yellow top bush, which is also kind of looking a mess at the moment. But this is just grass gone running amok, and it will get really tall. Like, this thing is, what, 2 feet tall? And it's going to seed. This is where it's important to start learning the plants that you are growing, because I've been walking past this weed wondering, what is this? It looks super familiar, and now I have figured it out. This is actually my scorpion tail. I have scorpion tail all the way over here. And this little one has just started growing all the way over there. So you do want to get to know some of the wildflowers and flowers you put in your yard, because they will make their way into other locations. That one we'll just chuck back there. This right here, this is my nemesis. I hate this plant, and I always forget the name of it. I will put it on the screen once I re-find it. But this, when you see it growing, you get this out fast. Because here are its little itty bitty seeds, and the leaves and it have hypodermic needles on it, so it will stick to your skin. And later, if you pull out of it with your hands, it will itch so bad, so bad. Do not let this one get going in your yard. It is so bad. I hate this plant. I hate this plant with a vengeance. I hate this plant so much. Goodbye, plant. Every once in a while, you're gonna see one of these pop up. This is Biden's Alba. This is actually a good flower, but it is native, but it is a very aggressive grower. So you need to consider whether you want it here or somewhere else. Now here is what it becomes. This one has been mowed over. This is not uncommon because it will get into your grass, and then it puts down hugely deep taproots. And this is what those leaves turn into. But why is this an important plant? This plant is the third most common source of pollen and nectar for our pollinators in the state of Florida. And this is one of those ones that I get why people don't like it. I get why people like it. I think you just need to choose, if you want it, where you're gonna wanna keep it. Because when we get into the winter time, we have butterflies migrating to Florida. We have bees who do go dormant, but we have ones that don't go dormant. And there are very few food sources for them. And Biden's Alba is a critical part of them making it through the winter. And if you're not sure if you've ever seen this plant before, you've seen this plant before. You just probably didn't realize you were looking at it. You see it in parking lots. You see it in like the medians when you're walking into the grocery store. You see it all over the place. It usually looks so sad. Like it'll be growing up. I remember seeing it at work all the time. Like just the crack of the asphalt, just trying to live. And it looks so ugly because they're usually like just dumped with pesticides and chemicals, but they'll keep going. They'll live and live and live and live, which if they're in your nice grass lawn, like it can be kind of problematic. But having like a pot where you put Biden's Alba is actually a really good idea. So if you want to grow it, you can snatch seeds from like a flower you see in your yard or a neighbor's yard. No one's crying if you like take their seeds. You can find it all over the place. It's along the highways, it's in the medians. Near me, there are some medians that in the winter time, because they mow them like once every couple months, in the winter, they will turn completely like snow white. And this is not Florida snow. I know that's a totally different plant. But I call this one better because the thing that's called Florida snow, which is actually an invasive species, is like a pink white, and this one it's white. So it will look actually like white. It's really pretty. So while I don't want it in the middle of my grass, because if you're wondering why it's called Biden's Alba, every once in a while someone's like, is this political? No, Biden means two teeth, and it's because the seed of Biden's Alba, which is its scientific name, its regular name is like beggar's tick or something like that. There's a whole bunch of names, or tick seed. It's got like a bunch of names that just sound like ugh. So I just call it by its scientific name, Biden's Alba. So Biden's Alba means two teeth, and it's because this seed has these two little prongs at the end of them, so they're the two teeth. Bi means two, den, teeth. So there you go, fun fact. Also, I think if you look at the petals, I feel like the petals look like your incisor tooth. So it has a tooth look to it. That's why it's called Biden's Alba. So what I've done for a bunch of years is I've kept it in a pot, and I cut it back regularly, like once a month. It'll flower, it'll put out seeds. If you make sure the seeds all fall inside the pot, then it doesn't go crazy and get everywhere. You do not want the seeds getting all over you or your dogs, because you will have to hand pick them out. They do not, like I've gotten them on my jeans. You cannot throw it in the wash and they'll come off. They will stick through the wash. So you have to hand pick these little seeds out. So they're definitely one that you don't want to be like, yeah, just have it wherever. And there's lots of more information. I actually have a video about Biden's Alba. So if you want to watch that, you can learn way more about Biden's Alba. And I think I might have mentioned this before, but if you have not started to learn about your native wildflowers, especially if you have any in your garden, you should definitely look into them, because you will start to find seedlings of them all over the place. Like tropical sage is really good at self-seeding. If I show you below, Tropical sage, tropical sage, tropical sage. Baby, baby, baby tropical sages. There's so much tropical sage in here in different stages, which is great because you get free plants, but you will start to see it in places. And this is where you get to make some really fun choices about, do I keep it there? Do I let it keep self-seeding? Or do I want to move it? Or do I need to like suppress it with some stuff? So some things to consider. Oh, what's this? Oh, I think I know what this is. This is a Florida poinsettia. We actually have a native poinsettia to our state. And it looks like mine has self-seeded right on out of the garden. Wait, what's growing in my grass here? Do you know what this is? This is a baby papaya. The birds have poop seeds here. This will become those. I think I gotta move it out. While this isn't a totally comprehensive and every plant that you may find in your garden, I hope this got you started with starting to recognize some of the weeds that may show up and help you figure out if you need to keep them, remove them, or just move them to another location. And if you want to learn more about the most invasive species to our state, learn more about the Brazilian pepper. And if you want to learn about Biden's Alba and why you might want to keep it in your garden, check out this video right here. Okay, I'll see you soon. Bye.